I reckon I'll tell you a story most folks never heard, though the wind still carries whispers of it across the plains of Colorado. Back when the West was half wild, and the rivers still ran clear with snowmelt from the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, there rode a man named John Wesley Prowers, a trader, a rancher, and a restless soul chasing opportunity west of the Arkansas River. He wasn't born to dust and cactus like the old trailhands. He came from Missouri stock, clever with numbers and calm around cattle. But the frontier has a way of grinding down what a man thinks he is, until all that's left is what he truly is. John had set up his trade along the old Santa Fe Trail, dealing in hides, corn, salt, and sometimes whiskey. The Cheyenne and Arapaho came through those parts often. Proud people, quick to anger, slow to trust. But among them was a girl who carried the stillness of dawn wherever she went. Her name was Amache, daughter of the peace chief Lone Bear. She was young, yet her eyes had seen more than most soldiers ever would. Some say he first saw her at Bent's Fort, when the trading wagons rolled in like thunder clouds. She stood beside her father, straight-backed and quiet, wrapped in a blanket dyed the color of sunrise. John was used to bargaining with men who spoke in silver tongues or sharp ones, but when she looked at him, he forgot his price for buffalo hides and couldn't remember which language he spoke. Now, in those days, it wasn't common for a white man to take a Cheyenne bride. The soldiers frowned on it, the settlers whispered, and the tribes watched with wary eyes. But John wasn't one to let the talk of men steer him off the trail his heart had chosen. He asked Lone Bear for permission, respectful as was the custom, and the chief studied him long before he answered. "You say you trade with my people," he told him. "Then trade with me something worth keeping. My daughter's heart is not a bargain." John promised he'd treat her as his equal, and maybe Lone Bear saw truth in his words. Or maybe he just wanted a man of peace on the other side of the river. Either way, the marriage was blessed, half in Cheyenne tongue, half in English prayer. They built a home near Boggsville, adobe walls thick enough to keep the winter wind out and the sound of coyotes at bay. Amache filled that place with warmth. She burned sage in the corners and kept corn and dried berries in clay pots. John worked the cattle and managed the trade post, always between two worlds, the one he'd come from and the one his wife belonged to. Their children grew up speaking both languages, laughing in both cultures. They'd run barefoot through buffalo grass by day and listen to their mother's stories of the Great Spirit by night. John, for his part, kept teaching them to read the trail and count the stars, the way travelers did before maps took over. But peace on the frontier was like snow on a hot rock, beautiful, but never lasting. In 1864, when the Sand Creek Massacre happened, blood soaked the very soil they called home. Amache's father, Chief Lone Bear, was among those killed by the Colorado militia. She received the news not as a wail, but as silence that seemed to swallow the air. John found her sitting by the fire, eyes fixed on nothing, and all he could do was sit beside her. From that day, something changed in both of them. John turned more to ranching than trading, keeping his distance from soldiers and politics. Amache, though grieving, carried herself with quiet dignity. She refused to speak hate, even when she had every reason. Folks in town came to respect her, not because she was a chief's daughter or a rancher's wife, but because she carried strength the plains themselves would envy. Years rolled on like wagon wheels. Their ranch prospered, and travelers along the Santa Fe Trail would stop at the Prowers house, a big adobe place with a store, a school, and rooms for weary riders. Some came out of curiosity, others for the calm that hung in the air there. They said Amache could soothe even a fevered mind with just her presence. When John passed in 1884, the plains felt emptier. His body was laid to rest near the home he built. But folks said his spirit still rode the horizon at dusk, keeping watch. Amache lived on, raising their children and tending to the land. She saw railroads carve through what used to be buffalo country, and barbed wire cut across trails that once belonged to no one. Yet she never left. She'd stand at sunset, watching the orange sky melt into blue, and say softly in Cheyenne, "The land remembers." Now, when you drive through southeastern Colorado, there's a county named Prowers, and a house still standing in Boggsville. Step inside, and you can almost hear spurs on the floorboards, and smell the faint mix of smoke and sage. The story of John and Amache isn't a legend. It's carved into the land itself, proof that love can take root even in the roughest soil.